US President Donald Trump and his team are discussing options for acquiring Greenland, saying the goal is always an option.
Denmark's prime minister is now speaking out about a possible U.S. takeover of Greenland. She says if that happens, it would essentially be the end of the NATO military alliance.
Fresh off the successful mission in Venezuela, an emboldened Donald Trump is eyeing off his next target, Greenland. The US president's desire to take over the territory is threatening to fracture Western military alliance NATO.
A quiet line delivered in Paris sent a shock through the Arctic. Standing beside Denmark's prime minister, Canada's prime minister made something unmistakably clear. Greenland's future belongs to Greenland and Denmark, not to threats, not to force, and not to any country that believes borders can be rewritten by pressure. Canada, he said, would stand openly with Denmark, and it would back that stance with action by opening a consulate in Nuuk. The timing was no accident. Only hours earlier, President Donald Trump had renewed his claim that Greenland should belong to the United States, even raising military force as a possibility. That single exchange marked a turning point. For a long time, Arctic politics followed an unwritten script. The United States led. Allies like Canada and Denmark aligned with Washington. Russia filled the role of the shared rival. Greenland remained a strategic island under Danish control, hosting American military assets while staying largely outside public conflict. That balance depended on restraint and quiet cooperation. Then the script was torn up. Trump's administration went further than talk. A special envoy was appointed with a clear mission to pull Greenland into the United States. The White House openly stated that force was never off the table. Suddenly, assumptions that had shaped Arctic security for generations no longer held. Canada faced a choice, and it made one that few expected. Ottawa did not hedge. It moved closer to Denmark, coordinated with Nordic partners, and treated American pressure as a threat to alliance stability itself. Diplomatic visits, indigenous leadership engagement, and a permanent presence in Greenland followed. The message was firm and public. So how did a push for American expansion end up strengthening a Danish-Canadian alliance instead? Why did Canada decide this line could not be crossed? And what does this mean for the future of Arctic power, NATO unity, and Greenland itself? Greenland sits at the center of a geopolitical storm that few people outside policy circles ever expected to see unfold this openly. Covering 2.16 million square kilometers, with roughly 80% of its surface locked under ice, the island is massive in size and small in population, home to about 56,000 people, most of them Inuit. For centuries, Greenland has been part of the Kingdom of Denmark, and over the past several decades, it has steadily gained greater autonomy while remaining tied to Copenhagen. That balance has allowed Greenland to govern its internal affairs, while Denmark retains responsibility for defense and foreign policy. Until recently, that arrangement was rarely questioned by allies or adversaries. The island's strategic value explains why it never stayed out of great power calculations for long. Greenland sits directly between North America and Europe, guarding access to emerging Arctic shipping routes that are becoming more viable as ice recedes. The United States maintains Patuxent Space Base, previously known as Thule Air Base, which plays a critical role in North American missile defense through early warning radar systems. From this location, military planners can monitor activity across the Arctic, including movements linked to Russia and China. Geography alone makes Greenland indispensable to any country thinking about Arctic security in serious terms. Economic factors only deepen that interest. Greenland holds vast deposits of rare earth minerals, essential for batteries, advanced electronics, renewable energy systems, and modern defense technology. Estimates place the value of these resources in the hundreds of billions of dollars. As Arctic ice retreats, offshore oil and natural gas reserves also become more accessible, raising the stakes even higher. In an era defined by competition over critical minerals and supply chains, Greenland represents opportunity and leverage at the same time. Donald Trump's interest in Greenland did not appear out of nowhere. During his first presidency, he floated the idea of buying the island, a proposal Denmark rejected politely but firmly. The idea was set aside, and many assumed it would remain a curiosity rather than a policy direction. That assumption proved wrong. In his second term, amid heightened nationalism and accelerating competition in the Arctic, Trump revived the push with far greater intensity. This time, the language changed. The White House spoke openly about annexation and stated that military force could not be ruled out. Officially, the justification centered on national security. Administration officials argued that Chinese and Russian activity in the Arctic required stronger American control, that access to critical minerals was essential, and that NATO's northern flank needed protection. Beneath those claims sat a deeper message that allies quickly understood. Territorial sovereignty was being treated as negotiable when American interests were involved. Long-standing assumptions about respect between NATO members were being replaced with pressure and threats. Denmark heard that message clearly. If the United States was willing to threaten Danish territory over Greenland, then no alliance guarantee felt entirely secure. The concern was not limited to Copenhagen. Other NATO members recognized the implication that power, rather than shared rules, was becoming the deciding factor. The issue stopped being about Greenland alone and started becoming about whether alliances still rested on mutual respect. Canada faced a choice in that moment. Historically, most Canadian prime ministers would have tried to navigate a narrow path, expressing concern about rhetoric, while avoiding a direct break with Washington. That approach usually involved calling for dialogue, emphasizing unity, and declining to take explicit sides between the United States and European partners. Mark Carney chose a different route. Standing in Paris on January 6, 2026, beside Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen, Carney stated that Greenland's future would be decided solely by the people of Denmark and Greenland. The wording mattered. It directly rejected any American claim or role in determining the island's status. He followed that statement with action, announcing that Canada would open a consulate in Nuuk, Greenland's capital, a concrete diplomatic presence designed to support Denmark's sovereignty. The symbolism extended further. Carney confirmed that Canada's Governor-General, Mary Simon, would travel to Greenland in February alongside Foreign Affairs Minister Anita Anand to formally open the consulate. Simon's role added layers of meaning that went well beyond protocol. She is Inuk and previously served as Canada's ambassador for circumpolar affairs, as well as ambassador to Denmark. Her presence signaled recognition of Greenlanders as an indigenous people with the right to self-determination, not as a population to be absorbed by outside power. This was not a ceremonial visit or a symbolic gesture designed for headlines. It was cabinet-level engagement during an active dispute, timed while the American president was openly threatening annexation. Carney's language remained measured, but every phrase was deliberate. He spoke of sovereignty, territorial integrity, and self-determination as fundamental principles. Those concepts left no room for reinterpretation. Self-determination placed decision-making with Greenlanders, not Washington. Sovereignty affirmed Denmark's authority as legitimate. Territorial integrity underscored that borders cannot be altered through coercion. Frederiksen recognized exactly what was happening and responded in kind. She thanked Carney for his clarity on national sovereignty and emphasized cooperation among NATO allies as equals. Her phrasing highlighted collective security without implying American leadership. The emphasis shifted from hierarchy to partnership, from deference to mutual respect. Canada was not acting alone. France, Germany, Italy, Poland, Spain, and the United Kingdom joined Denmark and Canada in issuing a joint statement that left little room for ambiguity. Greenland belongs to its people, and decisions about its future rest with Denmark and Greenland alone. 7 NATO allies publicly rejected territorial claims made by another NATO member. There was no attempt to soften the message or create diplomatic space for compromise. European leaders treated the situation as a direct challenge to the alliance itself. Frederiksen warned that American annexation of Greenland would effectively end NATO. That warning carried weight because it reflected a broader concern that alliance commitments were being undermined at their core. Trump appeared to assume that European governments would object quietly and then fall back into line. Instead, they coordinated a unified response that left the United States isolated. Canada played a central role in that coordination. Carney met privately with Frederickson in Paris ahead of a Ukraine security summit, using the meeting to align Arctic security strategies that deliberately excluded American territorial demands. The message was unmistakable. Cooperation would continue, but not on terms dictated by threats. This marked a fundamental shift in how Arctic security was organized. For many years, American leadership had defined the region's strategic framework. The United States maintained the largest military footprint and set the tone for NATO's Arctic policies. That model depended on trust. When that trust fractured, allies began exploring alternatives. Mary Simon's visit to Greenland reinforced that shift at a human level. Greenland's population is predominantly Inuit, and indigenous identity plays a central role in its political culture. By sending an Inuit governor-general, Canada acknowledged those connections across borders. The message was that indigenous self-determination mattered, and that any attempt to absorb Greenland without consent would violate those rights. That message resonated within Greenland, where decades of political development focused on autonomy and cultural preservation. It also resonated in Canada's own Arctic regions. Inuit communities across northern Canada watched closely. A failure to stand with Greenland would have raised questions about how far Canada would go to protect Indigenous sovereignty under pressure. By taking a firm stance, Ottawa signaled that Indigenous voices would not be sidelined for convenience. Trump's strategy produced outcomes opposite to those intended. Instead of securing Greenland, it united European allies against American demands. Trump sought to demonstrate strength by asserting a claim over Greenland. The result revealed vulnerability. Carney's response ensured that revelation was impossible to ignore. By siding openly with Denmark, coordinating with Europe, and elevating Indigenous self-determination, Canada helped transform the Arctic into a space where American leadership is no longer taken for granted. So, what do you think? Tell us in the comments. Subscribe for more, and we will catch you in the next one.